Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar. Today we are sitting down to talk about The Blind Bandit, the Season 2's 6th episode?
Yeah.
5th? 6th? 6th.
Sixth.
Yeah.
Sixth.
Yeah. I'm terrible at keeping track of that. I think I do that like every other week. Like, this is the 4th, 5th, 3rd, 20th? I don't know. It's an episode. So maybe what the answer is just to not say what number episode it is when I'm not sure.
I don't think it helps that when I send you the files, I've not been numbering.
No,
them either.
it's so funny. It's such a. I tell you what, the file names for our podcast listeners, dear listeners, give you Chris's and my personalities exactly. I label mine AA 06 DD. So that's Analysing Avatar number 6, Danny Doolan, which means my file. And then Chris sends me, like, the most inconsistently named files. Sometimes he just names them random shit. Sometimes mostly it's just like Analysing Avatar, The Blind Bandit, or something like that. But, like, sometimes he'll just really throw me off by doing it in reverse order, or, like, he'll give it a completely random name.
It's because when I tried to do numbering for Steven Universe,
yeah, I remember this.
To be fair, we'd have this trouble less with Analysing Avatar,
yeah,
because it's more consistent. But it would be is it the number episode for the podcast? Is it the number episode of the show?
Right.
Like, is it
yeah.
Is
so
it
then I was getting mixed up
2
audio files.
So.
Yeah, I do remember that happening actually. So maybe it is wiser that you call it, the Blind Bandit instead of numbering it.
Yeah, so I just find it easier. But if you want, I can put 2-6.
Yeah, which is what it would be, which is what I'll probably have it as. Or yeah, I do, actually, you're right. I wouldn't put it as 06. It would be 26 because it would be till 26th of these. So yeah. Anyway, that's just some random behind the scenes nonsense. It's even funnier with Nothing But Static because, like, sometimes Chris will, like, date it. He'll be like, Nothing But Static that we recorded on this date. And then sometimes he'll just write a random thing related to the episode.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you AA. AA out of all of them, I think I'm the most consistent. But Nothing But Static is anyone's guess. It's whether if a clear title has presented itself during the episode, I will, if nothing else but to remind you of that title we discussed, call it the title.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Definitely. Anyway, let's talk about Avatar, because I've been waiting for this episode for a long time, Chris. This is a big one. For an obvious reason. I think some people might sort of feel that even me sort of saying this might be kind of spoilery, but I feel like the episode makes it very clear. This is the episode on which Toph joins the gang. Like, this is a new character introduction, and a very big one. And I'll say it right now. I've said previously, my favorite character isn't in the show yet. I'm willing to bet that when you saw this episode, you went, I guess this is the character Dan was referring to.
Definitely.
I love this character, and this is her introduction, and it's such an important episode just for that on its own, but also, like, what a fascinating character to introduce. Like, it's not just here's another member of the gang. It's here's a character that's got a depth of their own and a sort of an interesting personality that's a really good counter to the personalities of the rather sort of hopeful gang, that we have right now. They're all go get 'em and stuff, and she's quite she seems quite surly. And obviously, there's only hints of that here, but it's something they get to explore with her as we go forward. Because she is hard like stone. She's tough. She is grizzled to a point for her age, and that makes her a really interesting element of the group. But then there's the whole representation element of it. It's nice to have a character with a disability on the team, and also someone so capable, and also somebody dealing with that, like, whole idea of, like, the whole idea of being people assuming you're not capable through her parents, which is also a really good topic, and I'm sure something that everyone can relate to, whether with disabilities and not. I mean, we've all been underestimated, in our lives. So there's something very relatable about Toph. So yeah, anyway, enough of just my general love for it. For those that don't remember, it's the episode she joins. They go to look for an earthbending teacher. They stumble across Toph, who has secretly been wrestling, but is actually the child of the Beifong family, with the richest family that side of the Earth Kingdom. And basically, they think she's this helpless blind girl, but actually she's super tough. And Aang is trying to convince her to come along with them. There's a whole subplot surrounding some money that the wrestling people think they've stolen. They get kidnapped. Toph proves herself to be awesome, but her parents still don't want her going anywhere. And in the end, she lies and tells Aang that they've changed their minds and that she can come, when actually now Toph's family think she's been kidnapped by the Avatar and have sent 2 people after them. That's the summary. Chris, I'm dying to know. I've talked too much. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you've proper fangirled, haven't you?
I cannot tell you how much I've been waiting to chat about this episode. This episode has been a benchmark for me since early season 1. I've been like, Blind Bandit. We're getting there. It's coming.
Yeah, because it's not even it's not even just the characters got a lot of depth. A lot of it is wrestling stuff, and you know, I imagine you like some wrestling stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I do. Yeah, I've definitely had my spurts in my life. I had the usual teenage or young teen, sort of 13, 14-year-old obsession with wrestling, which is a pretty standard experience. And then I got into wrestling when I was in my sort of early 20s, I think, and then sort of fell off it again as the years went on. But so yeah, I do have a
you were pretty stay up late, watch some wrestling at uni and stuff,
yes,
weren't you?
Exactly. Yeah. I would
Did you go around Steve's once to watch wrestling?
Sorry,
I don't want to say his full name. We'll talk about that.
Oh yeah. I do remember. Yeah, Steve. Yeah. Yeah, well, that was when I was also now that's where it's merged, because it started as wrestling and then eventually I got into the UFC, and I was going around. I remember going around to Steve's all night to watch a UFC event, and that's obviously a very different thing because that's an actual sport, whereas wrestling is quote marks sports entertainment. But
fair enough.
There's a lot to love for Dan in this episode. It's true.
Yeah, no, and I really loved it as well. Like you say, the character's got an awful lot of depth, fascinating character, and a lot of that depth is visible in this. It's in this 23 minutes or whatever it is, which is hugely impressive. The visuals of the wrestling is fun and great. It's really entertaining. It's a really funny episode. Highlights being anything to do with Katara and those earthbenders was amazing. Just a girl's got her ways or whatever she said, and then it cuts to them just blasted with ice. Amazing. I have a nitpick, Dan. If you want my one nitpick, if you want to get it out of the way now.
Straight into the nitpick. Yeah, go for it.
Just to get it out of the way, because we know we love the episode, and actually my nitpick's not really anything to do with the episode, and it's not really a nitpick. It's just it's a statement, Dan.
Like an observation.
Yeah. And I will swear in presenting it, and I apologise in advance for that. How many fucking people are going to be chasing them this series? How many people are hunting down this guy? Because now we're on to 3. We're on to Zuko.
If we're going by individuals, we've got Zuko, Azula, May, Ty Lee, then what's his name from this? Mr. Yu, the trainer from this, and then the guy whose name I forget. That's the wrestling promoter. So that's 6 characters.
Yeah. I'm like, if we not got enough, we've still got that fucking comic coming, guys. We don't need every character in this world to be after them and hunting them down. Because I think the minute she appeared, I went, oh, she's run away, and they're gonna send those people after her. And
right.
I'm just like, oh yeah, we got more people after this gang. But that's just
I guess no,
it's not an actual nitpick.
Well, it's a prospective nitpick, because it depends how it's handled, obviously. Because essentially the complaint is this too many things going on in terms of people chasing them, and the answer to that will very much invariably be how it's handled going down the line. Right? Because if they manage to balance it where they show up at different times and it all feels quite even by the end, and you don't feel that, then that's not really going to feel like a nitpick at the time. It's going to be okay. Whereas if it does feel like it's too much, because it's like every week it's it's another person just behind them, visiting the town they've just been in or whatever, then that's going to feel too much. So it is really, from the perspective of someone who hasn't seen further, it is a valid thing to observe. It's definitely something that you could go, that is 100% a potential pitfall the season might fall into, but it really does depend on the execution, which you don't yet, from this perspective, know. So I think it's a very valid point, and definitely something that you'd be right to be concerned about, because I do think from the position of this episode, it's definitely a potential problem they could run into if they don't handle it correctly, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But the actual episode is fantastic, really. Very entertaining. Not, and we will, once we've got enough space from the genre heavy episodes, we will move on from talking about this. Not particularly a genre like last week's, but I think for me a better example of an episode that's not really a genre. Like obviously you could make an argument for wrestling, but it's so much more than that, and the whole, only the wrestling sequences are like that. Well, it's not even particularly wrestling, is it? It's fighting, like, it's spectator fighting of some kind.
I think it very does heavily lead into wrestling, like fake wrestling, like it's all like sort of like a show.
Like characters. And
there's some of it's in the trivia, but I can cover some of it now. I mean, the boulder is a direct reference to The Rock. He's voiced by.
How did I not realize that?
Right. I mean, Earth Rumble is a parody of the wrestling match that's called a Royal Rumble, which is a real thing. The idea that they would do smack talk from across the ring before they start is very much a pro wrestling thing, not a real fighting thing. The boulder is actually, they tried to get The Rock to voice him, but they sadly couldn't make it work. So they did actually go the next best route, and they got Mick Foley, Mankind, who is a longtime friend and on-screen rival of The Rock. Mick Foley, probably one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. So, I grew up in that era of Mankind, off the Hell in a Cell. So, like, hearing Mick Foley get to do some voice work in this is great. And his over-the-top impression of The Rock is hilarious.
Do you think that's why it's not the boulder that joins them to go after them? Because, even when you did it in the recap, you're like, the promoter dude. In my head, I'm like, why is it not like the boulder?
Yeah.
But actually, if they wanted the boulder to be The Rock, they were never going to get him long term. So,
right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so in the writing stage, maybe they did tone his role down to make sure that they didn't get screwed over if they could only get The Rock for the one episode.
It just feels like maybe that was the case.
Yeah, very possible. And obviously the Fire Nation man character is a reference to wrestling's sort of tradition of having bad guys that reflect the global bad guy of the time. So, during the Cold War and America's tensions with Russia, professional wrestling had a lot of Russian villains. That because it's an easy way to get the crowd to boo at someone, right? He comes in, he burns an American flag, he holds up a Russian one. It's an instant win if you're doing essentially pantomime, which is what wrestling really is. It's a lot of like, here's the good guy, here's the bad guy, someone to yell to scream for, someone to boo at. I've been to one professional wrestling event in my entire life. It was a WWE Raw, and Nadia came with me, and even though she had no idea who any of these people were, the characters are so clearly good at being defined as good guy, bad guy. She knew who to root for every time. So, she was in with the crowd, like screaming and cheering, and you know what I mean? And that's that back and forth. So having the Fire Nation guy, who, by the way, had a slight Russian accent, which I guess was a nod to all that, that use of, and they've done it in the past with other ethnicities and nationalities, I should say, as well. So it's something they do less of these days, thankfully. Kind of problematic because it's usually a white dude pretending to be a character from the Middle East or whatever. They've done that, so it's been a problem. But that's another direct reference. The Earth Rumble Championship belt is very similar to the WWE Championship belt, and even the raised fist logo for Earth Rumble is extremely similar to the steel fist that was iconically part of the set of SmackDown in its early years, WWE SmackDown. So it absolutely is professional wrestling to a T. Like, they've really gone quite far in sliding it on, which I think is great because it's done in a way, as we've just proven, where a non-wrestling fan doesn't feel like references are going over their head. They just don't notice. That's actually kind of genius.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, so you didn't feel like you completely get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's done incredibly well. And I think and very, very entertaining. And I think what helps with that is not only is it amusing, but the audience somewhat gets swept up in Sokka's excitement.
Yeah.
Because Sokka's doing the whole yeah, like that makes you as an audience member kind of get a bit swept up in that spirit.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It absolutely does. It 100% does. And that's what it's like going to a real wrestling event. Like I said, Mike, I was so surprised at how quickly just the energy of the crowd got Nadia screaming profanities at the bad guy. Like it was instant. It was really quickly. She was like very on board because it's going to see one of those events. I get not necessarily wanting to watch televised wrestling because you're not got the crowd and all of that. But honestly, anyone who can should go see one of those WWE events in person because it's a stunt show. It's a stunt show. A guy comes out and he's the good guy. A guy comes out, he's the bad guy, and you'll like push the good guy over, and then the match itself will start, and there'll be the back and forth, and you get to cheer and boo, and it's just a ton of fun. It's like a pantomime. It's I still do sort of understand even though I've fallen off it over the years, like I still very much understand the appeal of wrestling, and particularly the live version of it. It's really a lot of fun.
It's a sports soap opera. Like
yes, yeah, exactly.
It's in a way, it's surprising. I guess I guess there's enough soap opera shit in football without having to manufacture it. But like, it's surprising that it hasn't happened with another sport.
Yeah, that's a really good point, isn't it? It's such a unique beast, professional wrestling, this fake sport. How that evolved and became what it is, because it obviously evolved out of Greco-Roman wrestling, which is a real legitimate sport they literally do in the Olympics. And yeah, it's become this... Yeah, you're right, actually. How has that not happened in any other sport?
But anyway, well, yeah. maybe that's what the Super League was trying to be, Dan. I was going to say that's a reference that people won't remember in 2 months' time, 3 months' time when they're listening to this. But anyway, there was going to be we're amongst the Premier Super League football crap. Anyway, back to Avatar. The character. I mean, she's got what a great character. What a kick-ass. Interesting. I love the chemistry between her and Aang. I'm almost like, I almost wish it almost feels like now, whereas it felt a little bit like, why are you pushing the romance Katara Aang stuff? Like, it felt quite early on for them to be doing that, like in the previous episodes of this series. But now it almost feels like you got to set that in place so that, like, because it almost feels a little flirty. Like, if they hadn't have done and I don't think anyone writes or plans for this kind of stuff, but if they hadn't have done the Katara Aang romance stuff, I'd be sat here now going, maybe Aang and her are going to have a romance, although she's only 12, isn't she? So maybe not. But you know what I mean?
Isn't he only like 13, 14? Like, it'd be too young for them to have a romance. But he's quite young, remember? He's younger than Katara.
Yeah, good point. I just think the chemistry between those two characters is phenomenal.
Yeah, and he's technically 112, but he's physically 12.
Yeah, what's amazing? I mean their chemistry in general, not like romantic chemistry, just the relationship.
No, I know. I just happened to get the answer to the question we were asking, which is what I was asking myself, which is exactly how old is Aang at this stage. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to tell me, right, the next 10 episodes are literally just their training sessions, I'd be like, yep, I'm in.
Right.
Sokka yelling on the side, like, sounds great. Like, I'm there. Like, I honestly, they wrote her so well.
Yeah.
And they wrote her dialogue and, like I say, chemistry and relationship with Aang so well.
I think it's a combination of, like, really smart character design choices. And I don't mean physical design, although she is a really cool design for a person, for a character on a screen anyway, but we'll come to the visual element later, I suppose. But just as if you're sitting down to add a character to the existing Aang, Sokka, Katara dynamic, like, such a smart choice to have this character that can almost be antagonistic, because they are all very friends, the three that we have. And that's lovely. And it's nice to see them constantly being supportive of each other and the little playful jibes. But you feel like with Toph, you've got a character now who will call them out on their bullshit, like in a much more overt way. You know, like go on.
Go on. I kind of almost can't predict whether she's going to slot right in and be part of the gang or be a bit antagonistic and, shift. I feel like the writers of this show are clever enough to know that exploring what happens when a fourth person joins that tight-knit group is interesting. And I think we're going to get some of that, and that's going to be great. Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. I think you're exactly right. That is kind of like the best thing to do, and that's why it's such a smart choice to have a character, because she's also forgetting the whole group element of it. You just want to take a look at her and Aang's situation. Like, could you have found a better foil for Aang's playful, light approach to things with someone who is so grounded and so tough?
Yeah.
She's not going to take any shit. There's kind of an irony to this episode, actually, because this episode starts with him going to that guy's school, to learn, and getting a rock smashed in his face and being like, yeah, not for me. And you just think, having met Toph now, you just sort of go, if you don't think Toph is going to just smash you in the face with rocks to teach you how to earthbend, you are mental. Like, she is clearly going to do exactly that. But I thought it was a really good and clever way to do it, because she's such a good, almost like a foil personality-wise to Aang. And it's also a really neat idea that, like, the people who have the different bending practices do have different personality types, almost different temperaments. It's almost like star signs. He's sort of calm and wise, and he likes to think, and he sort of like has this whole monk persona going on, and that's almost feels like the exact opposite to earthbending and what Toph is. But
whilst they're opposite in some ways, they're also incredibly similar, because her approach to earthbending is literally to listen, is to take in, is to hear the nuances in the movements and stuff.
Yes.
That's very Aang.
Which means she might be the perfect teacher, which is, I guess, what Boomy was hinting at.
Yeah, but also, get ready, strap in for this, Dan.
Oh.
You know when you think something, you think, this is some good fucking analysis. Get ready, folks. I don't mean to big it up, but it will live up to it. In a way, Dan, they have parallel stories, because he was physically trapped in the ice, and whilst time changed and the world around him changed, and then he was released into it, and she has been trapped by her parents in this bubble as well, and now she's broken free of it and is out into the world. So whilst they are different, they also have a lot of similarities, which I think will be fun to explore as well.
Yeah, and I think also just the runaway element. We know Aang ran away from the monks, and his responsibility, and she's a little bit running away from her parents here. So you're right. There are a lot of parallels between the characters.
She's not a little bit running. She's running away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get the vibe that they
she's slightly ran away? She's in the back garden. She's basically gone nowhere.
Did you get the vibe that Sokka, especially because he had the dialogue, did you get the vibe that they kind of knew she was running away? The way Sokka's like, well, we better go quick before he changes his mind again.
I did. I must admit, I do distinctly recall on previous watches, maybe my first, I can't remember, but like having that exact thought. Yeah, I won't say whether that turns out to be the case or not, but it definitely felt like they laid the groundwork for like, I'm not so sure this is a thing, but but at the same time, we really need the teacher, and she's clearly the right person, kind of destined for it. Let's bring her along.
I hope that Aang tells her about the comet and she becomes the voice of the audience. She's like, there's a fucking comet? Why are you dicking about going to wrestling shows?
Yeah. I think there's just so much to love about this episode, but it's hard to even, because Toph's such a good, clever, sort of perfect inclusion to the show and such an important character. And I know I'm not alone in this, by the way. Toph is a fan favorite also. And even the other day on the Discord when I posted that we'd recorded what was the last episode we recorded? Avatar Day.
Avatar Day.
The first comment from Justin McJabud in our Yellow Lounge in the Patreon lounge was so close to Toph, which is like I think a lot of people will feel this way. Such a so well as a result of that. That excitement. It's so hard to even analyze this as an episode, but it is also fundamentally a really good, clever story in itself.
Yeah, but I think even if it weren't for the top of it all, it would be a hard episode to analyze because it's one of those things where it's all good stuff. Do you know what I mean? And it's good because and we talked about this before. Like the fight sequences are good because the visuals and the really interesting stuff they do with earthbending is fantastic. Now, to analyse that anymore, we're just reciting clips and describing them, which isn't interesting. So, it would have been difficult anyway. But I will say, they did do... Like, at one point, I thought the sentence, shit, she's a better earthbender than he is an airbender. Yes. Like, because they just did such a good job of making her feel so empowered and feel so powerful, like, when it comes to the bending. She's so a master. Clever. Yeah, completely. She's almost, I would say, other than the old dude when he sort of kicked ass with, I think, earthbending as well, wasn't it? Like, the most skilled of their craft we've seen on the show, it feels like. Yeah. And I hope they continue to visualize her hearing the earth in the way that they visualized it this episode. I don't know if they will. I don't know whether that was like an introduction thing. Right. But that was incredibly imaginative and engaging and visually very, very interesting as well.
Yeah, and you didn't even need the explanation. Like, obviously it's a kid's show. You do it. You have her and Aang talking and she says, I kind of hear through the vibrations in the earth. But the amazing thing about those visuals are when you first see her in the arena during the, the Rock Rumble or whatever they called it, the Earth Rumble, I think it was. The way she moves her feet, and you see those like white lines to indicate the sound, and then you see the other guy move his feet, and you can tell she's essentially feeling it, hearing it. The close-ups on the feet as she moves and feels the ground, like you can absolutely understand without them ever. I mean, that's just great visual storytelling, and it's amazing because it's both visually communicating to us Toph's almost Daredevil-esque powers, but through her feet, not her ears. But also, it just makes her look supremely powerful. Like, they've made Azula seem like a really big threat this season, but they haven't done with her anywhere near as good a job as they've done with Toph. Like, and that's crazy because they did a really good job with her. She felt threatening from minute one, right? With her lightning powers and the blue fire. Like, she feels scary and threatening immediately. Yet somehow she feels almost dwarfed by how skilled they make Toph seem in this episode. It's so effortless.
But I think it's because her skill and ability have been so intrinsically linked to her character history. So given that that's how she literally sees, we know that her entire life has been building and working, and she has spent 12 years building these skills and working at them. I'd like to know more about her hiding them from the person that they think is her master, and it's almost like, why even have that as a thing? Because it just raises questions, I think. But equally, so does the whole. Right, what I've learned is that I've been too easy on you. I'm gonna tighten security around you, and it's like, has she not just proven that that's not gonna work, dude? Like, do you not just see what she just did? Like,
yeah, I mean it's interesting, isn't it? It's like this idea that like, oh, the fact you've gone off and done all this without me knowing proves I haven't got as much control on your life as possible. That's what he's really saying. I know that the words he's saying are making it all about protection and stuff, but this is what these people do. And I have a few people who have these sort of, I don't know if I'm using this term correctly, but like helicopter parenting, is that what they call it? I don't know if that's the right word, but like there's a term for like when parents sort of like overmanage the child's life like this. And I think there's always an excuse. It's always for their protection, for their well-being. It's always for some reason, and it's always bullshit, right? It's always, born out of fear, or well, yeah, it's usually born out of fear for the safety or the choices the child will make going forward, because you don't want to let them make mistakes, right? And that's bad, because children need to make mistakes, because that's how they'll learn not to make mistakes when it matters, when they're older. There are so many safety nets for children in society that, as a parent, I think, and this is coming from someone who's not a parent, by the way, so discount almost everything I'm saying here. But I feel like as a kid whose life was maybe overly managed by parents, or they tried, I felt very much like, let me fuck up, please, now, because if I fuck up now, I've got the safety nets. When I go to uni, I have a government loan to help pay my bills. I have support through the university. I have the university even help you find accommodation in your first year. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's
so let me buy my cocaine, mum and dad.
Yeah, Jesus, exactly. God damn it. Yeah. If I want to buy a brick, I'll buy a brick. But my point is, I think kind of clever about this is, you're right to identify Toph's parents' logic as being completely flawed, but it's because I don't think that is the real reason. I think that's the excuse they tell themselves, that it's for her safety. But really, they're just trying to control, And I think again, Toph's plot is one of the most relatable in this show. I can't relate to a monk frozen in ice for 100 years waking up to find the whole world at war. It's a very interesting plot, and I'm engaged with it on that level, but I don't relate to Aang. I guess you could maybe relate to Aang on the wider idea of having a responsibility thrust onto you at a young age, maybe, but not the same scale.
Yeah, but even in some ways, same applies to Sokka and Katara. We can't, we're not from war-torn countries. We didn't, our parents didn't go off to fight in a war.
Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, your parents fought the war on your cocaine use, but that was a very internal thing. Dan doesn't do cocaine. Let me make that very clear, if that's not clear already. So
tell that to my cupboard full of cocaine bricks, Chris.
In some ways, that says it, Dad, because I'm pretty sure the term is not cocaine bricks, is it?
Yeah, you get a brick of cocaine.
Do you? I don't know. I've never done cocaine.
No, but I've seen the movie Brick, which is about a brick of cocaine.
Ah, makes sense. And
I think in various other like mobster, crime movies and TV shows, I've seen them trade cocaine in bricks.
Yeah, no. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You get those sort of, the bricks, yeah.
And then there's that really bad cliche where the guy's selling it and the other guy isn't sure if it's good stuff, and he like sticks a knife in it and snorts some of it himself, and then like it turns like half the brick is like styrofoam or something, and he took it from the wrong half and gets screwed over. Like those, I feel like I've seen that 1,000 times in TV shows and movies. But that's the thing, is you're right. Maybe that isn't actually the term for it, but maybe because I get my only education about drugs from TV and movies.
So in a way, she's sort of probably, for most people, the most relatable main character we've had so far. Because, her thing is slightly shielded and overprotected by parents, which is a much more common thing than parents left to fight a war or ran away from the monks that told you were the being that was going to save the universe.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Like, she is by far. I mean, I guess Zuko, that, like, the disappointing, the expectant father, I guess, is pretty close. But I think Toph's is still more relatable.
So what we're learning here is Dan not only was overprotected, he then managed to disappoint his parents as well.
Well, yeah, if you book overprotective parents, they ain't going to be happy about it. I think we're... Anyway, relationships with families are complicated.
Dan's like, I was looking forward to talking about this episode. There's no need to make it a therapy session.
So let's talk about your mother. Right. So and your cocaine addiction. I think it's one of those things where it's such a removed world. It's not their fault that some of the characters aren't relatable on that very one-to-one scale. That's just the nature of a show where things are so heightened and things are so crazy. But
Also, they've made them related. We're not saying then. Hopefully, no one misinterprets us as saying that in no other ways are they relatable, because they've made them relatable in other ways. I think we're just saying that sort of broader relatability applies to Toph more than any others so far.
Yeah, agreed, 100% agreed. And I think it is genuinely just. I think it's what makes Toph this such a relatable character, because she manages to be funny while being relatable and also being a complete badass. And it's like, it's the trifecta, she's capable of doing anything. There are badass characters that aren't capable of being funny, or there are funny characters that aren't capable of being relatable because they're almost so funny that they sort of that they never get to express their real feelings because they always have to be sort of on, as it were, and it's harder to sort of shoehorn in that stuff. Or even characters so badass they can't be relatable because they're too tough to. So it's hard to find a character that can actually comfortably flip between all three of those modes in a split second.
And being a tough, unbeatable, badass fighter is actually how I relate to her. Do you know what I mean? Like for you, it's a lot about the family stuff, it seems, but for me, it's about the fact that we don't know our own strength.
I don't know what. Yeah. I mean,
seen me.
I've seen Chris take out a bunch of guys. It was I remember it was a dark night in Bournemouth where we went to uni, and we turned down a dark alleyway and we shouldn't have. And I was, typically, as always, trying to get my cocaine brick, and the deal went bad. And I was immediately, on the ground, cowering for my life. And Chris just leapt in, kicked the crap out of like 10 guys with knives. It was amazing. It was amazing. And then he gave me all the knives and said, "Sell these at the pawn shop and cover your debts and get your life together." And here I am today, all thanks to Chris.
Yeah, I threw one of them through a wall, left a giant man-shaped hole in the wall, completely busted it through, and then I turned to Dan and I went, "Looks like you're not the only one that needs some bricks." And it was quite a moment.
The funny thing is, I don't think we'll be able to monetize this episode of this, because I think one of the categories is over discussion of drug use on YouTube.
Hey, no one's talking about using it.
So guys, help us out. Be a patron. We won't be able to monetize this episode.
Before we do Triv, have you got...
Just gotta say, worth it.
Just for that line. Just for that line. Before we move on to Triv, what are your sort of other gushing notes?
Yeah, I really love the Katara "I'm watching you" moment with those two guys, and then Sokka sort of bows out with his arms out and just goes, "What a tribe," and then leaves.
I had to rewind that, because at first I thought he said, "Drop the mic," and I was like, he can't have said "drop the mic."
Very good, very good. Yeah, I loved Sokka's whole retail therapy plot. Where he bought a bag and then it matched the belt.
I like that someone in the scripting and putting together of this episode, some genius, some madman or woman, some just absolute champion went, "Should we give Sokka a bit of a B plot about how he's bought a bag?"
And somehow make it one of the most entertaining parts of the episode. It's great.
Amazing line when he says something like, "She's tougher than you," or something like that, or I can't remember what the line is, but the response from Katara is, "Says the man whose bag matches his belt."
Yeah, yeah, he wrote that one down. That's a really great line. Yeah,
right.
It's good. I loved that they used a badger mole to clean up the ring after each earthbending match. It's a small detail, but I was like, oh, that's funny. Instead of on an ice rink, you get the Zamboni out to smooth out the ice after it's been used. They just had a badger mole go across it and reform the ring. Super lazy, because earthbenders could just do that themselves, but on board. I think it's fun. I think it's a nice little parallel. I love when Aang gets into the ring with Toph the first time. I noted down Sokka's line. Aang, she goes, you gonna fight me like Twinkle Toes or whatever? And he goes, "No, I'm actually just here to talk to you." And Sokka in the crowd, all swept up in the wrestling event, is just like, "Boo! No talking!" And
It's like when Katara then slaps him and goes, "Don't boo him."
Yeah, exactly. She's like, "Yeah, don't boo him. He's on we're on his side," which I thought was great. Yeah, so that was all great. I loved how he tracked Toph down. The idea of the Beifong family have the flying boar insignia, which he saw. We haven't even really talked about this, but like Toph obviously not only perfectly fits Boomy's explanation, but how clever was it that they introduced her through the swamp episode as someone with like a weird Avatar vision. Was that great. Were you satisfied that we resolved that so soon?
Yeah, I was fine with it. Yeah, I think it's swept up in it all. Didn't even cross my mind until you just asked then. Yeah.
Because I imagine a few people probably watched it and felt like, oh, that'll be a plot for the whole season. Who did Aang see in the swamp? But it's like, what, 2 episodes later, 3 episodes later, they're just like, here it is. Like, they didn't mess about,
I think
did
when
they?
when it's done so satisfyingly, like, who cares, or satisfactory.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was just curious, because I could definitely imagine somebody feeling that way.
Yeah, it's fair.
I thought the wrestling plot was really clever in that, it looked like to them, because Aang airbended, that Toph had taken a dive and split the money with the kid. I liked that whole premise that they were like, felt like she basically robbed them and tracked them down. I thought that was generally quite clever. I also like the way that then merged obviously with the plot of Toph and her family, because that's what forces them to see her at her full badassery. It just all sort of came together in a really neat, clever way. We haven't really given the structure of this episode too many compliments, but it is actually really well plotted. All the moving parts all just come together in really neat, consistent ways. The only nitpick I had that's in my notes, and I should have said this when we were doing nitpicks earlier, Chris, but do you not think it's weird if the parents are so convinced Toph is this absolutely, delicate, fragile thing, that when she gets into the ring to fight the guys who just kidnapped her and Aang, they just take seats and watch?
Yeah, I think it's literally the taking seats. It wouldn't have been so bad if they'd have stayed on the side, because I was expecting it to cut to them in the doorway.
Right.
Like, yeah. What the fuck? Or maybe even he goes to help, but the master, stops him.
Yeah.
Or actually even the notion of him actually being so cowardly himself that he won't do anything to help his daughter, I think is quite an interesting one.
So they didn't play that.
But it's the fact that they took the time to take a seat.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It is just that they're sat down. Yeah. Because I think that would have just played as if they'd run in and were witnessing it as they'd just come in, if you'd done it with them stood at the side, maybe. But the fact that they'd gotten to the trouble of taking seats felt like they were, we're going to sit and watch our daughter fight. Like, which just doesn't fit. That was my only real nitpick. But I really thought that the way they sort of, the plots interwove in this episode between her family, the wrestling stuff, I thought it was all very good and helped both make it an entertaining episode with a really clear and concise sort of through line and a lot of forward momentum, but also it gave us all the excuses to do the things we wanted to do. Have her and Aang have that heart-to-heart, the whole tension of when Aang comes to tea as the Avatar and the parents don't know about Toph yet. That we haven't even talked about that scene, but yeah, that scene's brilliant too, where she keeps like making him like face plant in his soup or whatever. That whole sequence is wonderful, and it just like we get to see her being a complete badass. We get the reveal of her parents realizing she's a badass. Like they've managed to find a really good coherent plot that allows you to hit all the beats as well. It's just a very well designed episode.
Structurally, it's perfect.
Yeah, and also it finds time to like make sure that we don't just introduce Toph, we introduce Toph. Like, it's clear with this episode she's part of the gang. Like, they don't make no bones about that. She's not a one-off character, and you get that sense because they take the time to properly set her up. It's doing an awful lot very well. It's really hard to criticize.
Yeah, because to mention Doctor Who for once instead of Harry Potter. Whenever there was that Adam guy in series 1, I think he was called. There's Mickey in series 2. There's Jack in series 1. Whenever those characters joined the TARDIS for a bit, when Martha came back in series 4, all of them felt like they were there for a couple of episodes. It never felt like, right, someone new has joined and is going to stick around and stay. Whereas this very much feels like, she's here to stay for at least the series. And I would say the rest of the show, were it not for the fact that presumably series 3 is about firebending. So, whether she's, we didn't need a water master beyond this point, although arguably I'd like to think the canon is Katara is still doing that. He's just going to be doing both at the same time.
I think that is the implication. Yeah. They showed her early in this season teaching Aang water still. So, you'd have to assume that he's still learning waterbending from Katara.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I'm absolutely here for the character and here for that to be the case.
Yeah. I think that's all my notes. Should we head to the Triv?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So, Triv it up. So the song that plays during Master Yu's first conversation with Lao Beifong, that's Toph's dad, is called the Jasmine Flower, and it's actually a traditional Chinese folk song. It's used later in the show sort of as a theme in general for the Beifong family. So, whenever they sort of show up, it's kind of underpinned, a bit like using the Imperial March whenever Darth Vader shows up, or a version of it. Not that it's that. It's not obviously here's the bad guy or anything, but I just mean like that piece of music undertones scenes involving Beifongs going forward. One of the boys that Katara beats up has the same hairstyle as the hippo, and in the DVD commentary, the creators have said the idea is that he is a hippo fan. Hippo is his favourite wrestler.
Yeah, nice.
Or earthbending, whatever they call it, wrestler. In Avatar Extras, it was said that the Beifongs are the richest people in the Southern Earth Kingdom, suggesting they are extremely rich, but maybe not as rich as was implied in this episode, because they kind of said they might be the richest people in the world, whereas Southern Earth Kingdom sounds much more finite. Off topic, but did you see Ricky Gervais's video on Instagram recently about his awards?
No.
He got I can't remember if it was People's Choice or BAFTAs or something. He won some awards, and he goes, I won a Best Returning Sitcom. And if you're thinking, that sounds very specific, Rick, is there a more general comedy award that covers all comedy, because that feels very, very specific. And yeah, actually there is. And I won that too. And then he pulls that award out as well. I don't know why I was suddenly reminded of that, but it's a very funny video.
If that's the case, just maybe get rid of one of the awards. Not Ricky, the organisers.
Yeah. Yeah. So the square design seen on Master...
That there is award semantics, even worse than the statics.
Yeah, I guess that it's possible in different years for for a new show to win best and a different show to win returning, but it happened that best comedy and returning comedy were won by the same show. But yeah, I agree. It's
but you set it up. You just do best new comedy and best returning comedy. You don't. Do you know what I mean?
You wouldn't do it overall. Yeah, you're right. We've divided it better in the statics than whatever award ceremony that is has divided it. Yeah, agreed. So the square design seen on Master Yu's hairpiece is also present on the outfits of his students, so that's probably the sign of his dojo, or whatever you want to call it. And Master Yu's academy is actually kind of a reference to those sort of shady strip mall dojos that give martial arts and martial arts schools quite a bad name, because it's you basically pay for lessons and they basically give your kids the belts after a certain amount of time, regardless of progress, assuming you're still paying. As a parent, that is. And they even hint at that in this. He states that if Aang pays for the whole year, he'd move him up to the next belt, which is, again, a hint at the connection to that idea. We don't really get them in the UK, but as a result of the Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah.
This particular episode is sometimes titled as the Earthbending Tournament. Not sure why that is, but yeah.
No, that's not as good a title.
It's not it's nowhere near as good a title, Chris. I 100% agree. This episode was ranked as the 12th in the 100 greatest moments in Nicktoons history. When they did that poll. So in Nicktoons,
do you know what was number
history,
1?
I don't, but I can see if I can find out. Should we find out?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Would it be? Is it the freaky as fuck CGI reboot of Rugrats? I imagine that'd be up there if they redid it.
Page not found. So I've got the link to Nick and More / Kids TV History Article Archive, which is the link that's put at the bottom of the Wikipedia page. But it doesn't. It's no longer up. Nickelodeon have removed it. Shall I just quickly see if it's up anywhere else?
That's all right. You keep reading and I'll see if I can.
I found it. I think I found it.
Oh yeah.
Oh god, all the top moments of SpongeBob.
Is that? Yeah, I found. Are you looking at the list on Spongepedia?
Yeah, I am, Chris. Which seems to be the same list though, because there's a few Avatar episodes. Yeah, 12 is Avatar: The Blind Bandit, and obviously Katara versus Zuko from the Siege of the North Part 2 is. I say obviously, actually, that's a bit of a surprise. Is number 7, but everything about it's so much SpongeBob in this list. But that seems to be the same list though, because again, Blind Bandit is 12.
I'm just going to come out and say it. This list is bollocks. There's not enough. There's not a lot of Hey Arnold. I'm trying to avoid any kind of Avatar things because I don't want to see an episode name spoiler. But there's not.
There's some Invader Zim. That's good. I see some Fairly Odd Parents. Fine. But yeah, this list is questionable at best. But still, I think it says a lot that this episode was ranked so highly. Even if the rest of the list seems to be somewhat bollocks.
Yeah, I completely agree that this is a great episode. I just think we're missing.
The fact that the entire top 7 is SpongeBob stuff is.
Yeah, but you know what Nickelodeon's like. It could have been voted for by the public, which
might explain it. Yeah, that's what they used to do all the time.
Explain it because you just get the SpongeBob fans going nuts.
Yeah. The last piece of trivia is just a segment of the song "The Avatar's Love" is played again at the end of this episode. That it's actually part of the song that we have as the opening and closing of this. It's that do 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 do. So it's a nice little piece of music. They play it a lot in the show. To be honest with you, I might stop mentioning it in trivia because it comes up a lot.
Fair play.
I have a listener question.
What's our question? Yeah.
So if you'd like to ask us a question, head over to the Patreon. I just posted a new post today. Soliciting for more questions. We actually have enough for the next 4 or 5 episodes, regardless if we get 0 responses to that. But it's always nice to have more because obviously there are 20 episodes in this season of Analysing Avatar, and I'd like to make sure we have questions for all of them. So please head over to the Patreon. Give us as little as $1 a month. You can both ask a question and get a shout out. Amazing. Also, access to episodes 1 week early. So if you'd like to hear next week's episode right now and you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever, you're welcome to go join and hear it this very minute. But this week's question comes from Will, who asks us, Chris.
What, Will? Will!
Yeah, Will from an old... So a very quick reference to an old episode of our Nothing But Static podcast where we made a joke that this Will would be switching off because we weren't reviewing a show he wanted us to review, and we kept going, Will, don't switch it off, Will! And it just evolved into us shouting, Will! Will! Many times. So this is from that Will.
And fun fact, despite going back and reviewing a lot of shows in various guises, be it forcing each other to review shows, be it watching shows that we miss, we've caught up and watched The Shield again, West Wing, flipping Auf Wiedersehen, Pet. We still haven't ever watched the show he wanted us to watch.
I wouldn't have I don't think I feel like pointing that out as a great idea, because now I feel like at some point we're going to have to. I've already seen some of that show. It's a good show. It's just, we
can name it. It's Psych. I don't think there's anything wrong with naming it.
Yeah, Psych. It was Psych. So it's a procedural. So I don't know. It's just one of those things where I don't know how much we would even feel the need to watch to be able to review it, but we can go back and look at it sometime. I'm not against the idea.
No, I love the idea that we never. I want to see how far we can push Will's commitment to us
while continually ignoring him.
Whilst continually not watching Psych.
Thanks for continuing to stick with us, Will. Your question this week was if. I'll read it exactly as he's phrased it. Who is playing you two in a movie about your life? So.
Well, you got you mentioned this, so I could think in advance, and I immediately forgot.
Yeah, so it's interesting, is it? Because I mean, the problem I have with this inherently, and it's not a bad question, but there is an immediate flaw in the question for me, because the reality is, no answer doesn't seem big-headed, because the reality is Hollywood movie stars, the people who would be in a movie, they're all very attractive. There ain't many, sort of overweight chudley Brits with shit hair. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's not a great amount of choice. So the reality is, they're either going to go down that he's fat, so we'll hire someone fat route, and it's going to be James Corden, regardless of whether I want it to be. Or they're going to do the thing where they cast someone much more attractive and much skinnier than me, in which case, wonderful. But I'm not naming that person because that suggests a certain amount of me thinking I look like that person, which I don't think is true.
I think Robbie Coltrane could pull off both of us easily. I think
the problem with I assume you mean maybe a young Robbie Coltrane.
I think I've heard before Chris O'Dowd, which obviously
Chris O'Dowd's a good shout.
Yeah, and I think he could play either of us, again with Dan's caveats of I'm aware I'm casting someone much better looking than we actually are.
Yeah. Chris O'Dowd's a great shout though. I mean, he's kind of got like an everymanness to him. I mean, he's Hollywood everyman, so he's still extremely handsome, obviously.
You know what I think?
In shape.
You know what I think would be good? Chris O'Dowd playing me and a bearded John Hamm playing you. I think John Hamm could do a great Dan Doolan.
The answer that I kind of landed on, but it's not great because it's a lack of legitimate answers. I did wonder about a younger. I say younger just because I assume if it's like I'm in my head, I'm assuming this is like a Rocket Man style biopic where they've cast someone quite young and they've aged them up rather than casting someone older and aging them down for the earlier parts.
Yeah,
of the
it's just a lot shorter because we've not achieved as much as Elton John.
Oh, a lot shorter. It's about 5 minutes.
Yeah, and 3 minutes of those are us yelling Will's name.
Yeah, and it's 1 minute of credits, 2 minutes of Will's name, and then 2 minutes of the movie,
and then about
1 minute of
seconds,
movie, then 1 minute of credits.
About 30 seconds glossing over the cocaine years.
The first thing that occurred to me, because they might have a slightly maybe rounder face, so you could maybe imagine them a little bit wider. They're not, but they could be. I thought Martin Freeman. Martin Freeman might be able to pull off a Dan because I feel like he's, a younger Martin Freeman has that. Also, when he was in The Office, he kind of had shit hair. No offense, Martin. You're a very nice man and a very talented actor, but you had shit hair in The Office, and I have shit hair. So
I'm only laughing because whenever you talk about haircuts, it still fills me with joy when we went to Fringe and it was a massive deal for all of us, and you got your haircut and it was just the most disappointing haircut you've ever had in your life.
Well, it wasn't too bad until I met you three, and I was relentlessly mocked for our entire Fringe run for having shit hair.
I still remember. I just remember you arriving, and there was just a beat, and all three of us were like, "What's going on with your hair?"
Yeah, it was a bad haircut. It was a really bad haircut. I've got a long history of shit haircuts, so it's fine. So yeah, that was my thinking. So are we settling on Martin Freeman and Chris O'Dowd?
I think it's a fairly good shout, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, just too handsome, just too handsome.
Yeah,
I'll take it. Like, I would be thrilled to be played by Martin Freeman. I'd prefer to be played by anyone really, other than maybe James Corden.
What about female actors?
Oh, you do like a gender swap version?
Yeah, man. Who would be good then? I'm trying to think.
You know what, actually, this is going to feel like I'm cheating because I'm just jumping to the other side, but who was the lady that played Dawn in the original Office? What's her name? I forget off the top of my head.
Lindsay Davies, I think, was her name.
Lindsay Davies. No, Lindsay Davies is a novelist. Lucy something, maybe? Lucy Davis.
Lucy Davis.
It's Lucy Davis. Yeah, I found her. Yeah, Lucy Davis. Sure.
Nice. Lucy Davis is a great shout. I'm gonna go even more arrogant than John Hamm and Chris O'Dowd and say that I think Emma Stone could play a good Chris Billingham.
That's brilliant. No, so just to clarify for the listeners here, the the sort of standard gendered version of the movie is starring Chris O'Dowd and Martin Freeman. The gender swapped version of it is starring Lucy Davis of The Office and Wonder Woman fame, and Emma Stone.
Emma Stone, yeah. Maybe Tina Fey. But I think Emma Stone. I think I'm layered, Dan, and I think Emma Stone could handle all of them layers.
Sure. You are like an onion. In that, you make my eyes water and you smell a bit.
That was beautiful. There you go. Well, Chris O'Dowd and Martin Freeman, and Lucy Davis and Emma Stone.
Beautiful. You got a bonus question there because Chris volunteered us to do the gender swap versions too. So yes, if you would also like to ask us a ridiculous question and have us say something stupid, then you're free to do so. I'm always nervous about answering these questions. Always. What? I don't know. Like I just feel like we're gonna you know what I mean. Like I'm worried I'm gonna incriminate myself for all the cocaine I've got stashed in my house. But
I think if I just said that Emma Stone would be cast as me, I think if either of us if either of us appears to be on drugs. Although Lucy Davis is also very generous for you as well.
100%.
They are both beautiful women.
Of course they are. And this is the problem.
Anywhere near us.
This is the problem with doing this whole I'll choose an actor to play me, because you're always inherently there are no actors I could have chose that wouldn't have felt like an arrogant choice. You know, the industry does have a leaning towards attractive people. People want to look at attractive people, I guess. You know, they're more marketable. It's better to stick their faces on posters. I understand. Not ideal. It's a shame that it works that way. It means Chris and I have no hope. But but you know, it's an inherently
between that and our lack of talent, we're really gonna struggle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the lack of talent. Yeah, I forgot about that part too. Damn it! All these beautiful, talented people taking our jobs. How dare they? So absolutely. I'm definitely punching up, as it were, with my choice of Lucy Davis, no question. Other stuff you can get us in all the usual places. As I already mentioned, the Patreon. If you want to ask us a question as well, feel free to do so. It's patreon.com/nothing but static. $1 or as little as $1 a month gets you into the tier. There are tiers if you want to give more, but they're just for anyone who happens to want to support us in that way. It doesn't change what you receive from the Patreon. It's always one episodes a week early, and the ability to ask questions for the podcast and get the little shout out. Also, obviously, the piece of art that is the sort of title piece of art of Appa at sort of in front of the sun comes from the amazing Raphodraws, who posts great artwork on like Instagram and Tumblr. And has I believe like a graphic novel available online. You can get those from like Rapho's Instagram page, which is just Raphodraws, or if you go to launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws, there's links to the Tumblr, the Twitter, the YouTube, all that there. Support Rapho in any way you can. There's cool t-shirts and mugs and stuff on I think there's like a Redbubble account where you can get some of that art on stuff. And any way you can support Rapho is a good thing, because Rapho has been very kind to let us use that piece of art, and it's a great piece of art. So, support. Otherwise, Chris, we missed something a couple of weeks ago, and it's in my notes here at the very bottom to bring this up before we sign off this week. And I know you're strapped for time, but very quickly, Chris.
It's just. Can I quickly, before you
interject?
Could I quickly? I've got
before my interjection. Yes, please.
Yeah, because I've got the actual answer. I've got the actual who would be cast as us and who could do it well.
Oh, really?
It's come to me, Dan. It's not Martin Freeman and Chris O'Dowd.
No.
Are you ready?
Go on.
It's Tim Key for you and Joe Wilkinson for me.
Oh my God.
I mean, it actually is, isn't it?
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm changing the answer. Joe Wilkinson and Tim Key. Tim Key is such perfect Dan casting. It's absurd. And I've just found out he was born the day before the September the 2nd. I'm September the 3rd.
There we go.
That's destiny. Oh man, and Joe Wilkinson, Chris. I mean, you'd have to trim the beard because your beard ain't that big. But otherwise,
yeah, he'd have to trim it. He'd have to trim it a bit.
But otherwise, Chris, that's bonkers.
I had to interject with that. I apologise.
No, because you have the right answer. You found the correct answer.
Yeah.
And if you don't,
that feels like a realistic
British,
answer.
For those of our American listeners, they're two British comedians. Do Google them. They're both excellent and very talented. But yeah, that's very funny. You're absolutely spot on.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry. Carry on with your interjection.
Yeah. So we missed a chance to add to our Knobhead Hall of Fame a couple of weeks ago, Chris.
Oh no.
I know. We set it up. We couldn't find anyone to put in it, even though we kept trying to force and make it work. Then we actually got handed an answer on a plate, and we just moved on.
Oh no!
You gave a massive rant about that little earthbending child that you thought was an absolute arsehole and rode Momo around. So
I don't know. No, I don't think we can put a baby in Knobhead of the Week, can we?
Absolutely, he's a fictional baby. I think if it was a real child, I'd feel differently. But it's a fictional animated baby. I'm okay with saying that fucking earthbending child, Knobhead of the Week.
Yeah. It's very cruel to Momo.
Enters the Knobhead Hall of Fame along with the old man who dobbed Haru in it back in Imprisoned from season 1, and Master Paku for the patriarchy in the Waterbending Master episode from season 1. So only 3 names in the list so far. We'll see how it keeps. We'll keep track of that. But yeah, I made a note to bring that up.
I think you could maybe make a contender for the dad from this week, but I think he's just a bad dad as opposed to a knobhead.
Yes. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Other quick places you can get us before we wrap up, youtube.com/nothingbutstatic. If you've not already seen us there, you can like the videos. That helps. Or comment. That also helps. You can email us, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk if you've got some thoughts, maybe some casting suggestions for Chris and I of your own. Although you're gonna have a tough time beating Joe Wilkinson and Tim Key, to be quite honest with you. But
I can't get over it. I'm like, that is the answer.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Obviously on Twitter you can say if you want to follow either of us or post your thoughts to us via Twitter, you can do. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham with 2 M's. So you can get us there and hear me rant about politics a lot. It turns out I didn't realize that's what my Twitter would become, but. It's really weird because occasionally my Twitter is this weird, I'll post something really political and then I'll be like, Mortal Kombat was great. I got to see a lady sawed in half by a hat. And it's like, who's this idiot? I feel like I undermine my political tweets with...
That's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's I think everything. I can't... Oh yeah, if you want to give us on your podcast platform of choice a like or a review or a... stars or thumbs up or whatever that format that service uses, that helps also. So that is everything for this week, finally. Not that I'm not enjoying myself, but I'm worried we stopped talking about the actual episode of the show quite a while ago. But thank you very much for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll speak to you next time when we sit down to discuss Zuko Alone.